Be inspired by the best sales professionals, sales leaders, and coaches in the world of B2B sales. From IT services, medical devices, through to coaching and consulting companies, these principles will help you accelerate your sales performance and growth. Using models from the best-selling book Inspire, Influence, Sell, and award-winning programs from Focus for Growth, you'll have the inside track on the psychology, skills, and systems used by the world's best sales teams. We'll hear from some of the best sales leaders from some of the fastest growing businesses in the world. They don't achieve record-breaking growth by chance. They have a proven sales and leadership approach and a laser focus on growth. You can hear exactly how they do it, one conversation at a time. This is the Inspire Sales Podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Lee. Welcome to this episode of the Inspire Sales Podcast. I've got a real treat for you today. I have Richard Moore with us. Richard is an absolute expert on LinkedIn, and not only LinkedIn content creation, but also how do you use LinkedIn to generate leads and engagement and communities and to grow your business really effectively. Today's conversation is brilliant. We talk about principles, we talk about content, we talk about specific activities and actions that you can take, and we talk about how it really does support your sales process, which of course improves sales growth in businesses and sales performance. It's a brilliant conversation. So strap in and welcome Richard Moore to the Inspire Sales Podcast. So welcome to today's episode of the Inspire Sales Podcast. I'm delighted to have Richard Moore with me. Richard, welcome to the episode.
Thank you for having me, Justin. I'm really looking forward to this. We've been connected a while, and it's nice to be able to hang out with you for some time and talk about this wonderful world.
The wonderful world of sales. And indeed. I love this topic, Richard. And I didn't introduce you intentionally because I was going to let you introduce yourself. So We've been connected for quite a while. And I remember when we connected because I've been recommended to follow and connect with you by a number of my contacts who were appreciating your work on LinkedIn. And I've also been really impressed with how open you are to your community and to contact, and the fact that you're here is testament to that today. So, but I'd love, if you don't mind, Richard, just kind of if you can give a little flavour of your experience and background to our listeners.
Yeah, so I'll give you the history then, if you wish. Yeah. I'll try and make it brief, though. So the short version is 20 years ago, I left uni because I didn't get funding for a PhD. I wanted to be an academic, Justin. And
wow.
I was wanting to write books and papers and, be in a dusty library. I was very romantic about that. But I needed a job. So I took literally the first job I interviewed for, which was, this is 2003, selling internet marketing. So cold calling. And it was like quite the experience for a fairly shy, introverted guy who wanted to study things to be calling people all day long. But basically, it was the making of me. So I've always been a big geek for computers and the internet and that. And it's so fortuitous that I've ended up here helping people sell online when I've always been involved in that space. But yeah. So it was 10 years corporate. And I was selling, then a sales manager, then ultimately a sales director at a headhunting firm. And I just loved it, the understanding the nuances in behavior, especially when you're cold calling. Learning to not be irritating is really an art, I find. But then taking it to like trade shows, meeting in person, and all the different variants or channels of selling was really good fun. 2013, I left the city and set my own business. It was actually two things at once. I launched two Taekwondo academies because I'd been instructing in London. And but I also started helping like startups on Facebook to sell. And I just identified straight away, knowing I could sell. I was like, there's people posting content, but they're clearly not making any money. So if I help them with that bit, and weirdly, people like making money, don't they? So it was kind of went down quite well. And so really back then it was real basic MVP stuff. It was selling time and explaining how to close stuff. And then when they got results, they would join again for another month with me. So just one-on-one coaching. I sold it on Facebook. I had a Zoom account and a PayPal account, and that was all it was. And then as the years moved on, Facebook evolved a little bit to Instagram, but the key change was in 2018. So top of 2018, I started with LinkedIn content, and that really was this like rocket that made the difference. And you know, I've launched a number of other products since then. It's been lovely to go back into corporate and help people and like train in different companies and things like that. But squarely, my focus is how to convert from content, much more of an organic attract approach. And it's really fun because, you know, every day is something different, but the fundamentals are often the same. And I feel like there's this crusade I'm on to help people get really what their talent deserves, you know, and get paid well for what they're good at, as opposed to the misery that many have of, you know, being online and posting content but not making any kind of living from it. So I feel like I've carved some value, a space of value out for myself.
Yeah, very good. I love that, because you know you've had that experience of cold calling, you've done events, you've worked in lots of different businesses, and you've been on the journey. You recognize how difficult that kind of front end of the sales process is, and I think a lot of people kind of have this, you know, they imagine that LinkedIn's going to be the answer, and all they need to do is go on and be there a few hours a day, and all of a sudden their diary will be full. They'll start to convert clients, but it doesn't quite work like that, does it?
It doesn't. No. And many have, you know, they get the knack for writing great content or even attracting people, but you know, it's what you do with them that matters. And you know, what we really have to recognize is there is a science, but there's also an art to warming someone in the right way, nurturing that moment when they've showed some interest, and not getting too excited or too keen, and taking them through a process where they're like, do you know what, you're my guy, and you know, I'm really keen to take it further. And I just love seeing it happen for people, and the kind of the culmination of it all, when you do spend time learning fundamentals and practicing and getting the reps in, is people are, you know, they're not even shopping around. They just want you. And that's a really wonderful place to be in. And that's beautiful sales. That's sales where it doesn't feel like you're selling, because they're already emotionally there anyway.
Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant, Richard. So let's can we dive into that?
Of course.
Right to the beginning, so people will seek you out. If anybody hasn't heard of you, then Richard Moore on LinkedIn, Moore.
That's right. The URL, I think, is Richard James Moore. Sadly, it's a very common name. I share the new head of MI6 is Richard Moore as well. So I get asked, can I be a spy, please? More than you'd realize. But yeah, so Richard James Moore, otherwise you'll get the wrong guy. And he's
right, Richard James Moore. You're in good company then, right? You're in good company. MI6. Very good. So people will, I mean, you've got, I should have looked before we came. Is it 70 or 80,000 connections or followers?
I think it's 74 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm not counting so much, but it's nice to have got a steady community around me over the years.
Yeah. And it's not just the numbers, it's the engagement. When you post, because of the quality of the content, and if anybody's not following you, they absolutely should after this episode. But the quality of your content, the advice you give, the practicality of you know the posts that you're putting out there, your engagement's really high. So people will come to you and kind of say, you know, I've got a problem with selling on LinkedIn. How do you start with people, Richard? What do you get them to?
Yeah,
kind of
it's a really good question, because it can be different for different people, and based on circumstances, it's important to recognize you can't. If you're at zero and desperate for cash, you can't market yourself to making money today. If you need £1,000 this week to pay your bills, you know, you need to get on the pitch a bit more. So the answer is a two-pronged attack. And crucially, that should never really change unless you have a particular automating kind of way of running a business. But the answer is you have a flow of content that is going to warm and condition your audience, and essentially show them that you're not just someone who knows some stuff, you are an expert, which eventually evolves to you being their expert. There are other people superior than me, possibly, but for some people, I'm exactly what they're after. Because there's people out there who might be watching a video of mine and go, I just don't dig the accent, and I'm a turnoff. Or there'll be someone who's like, oh, the way he said that, so exactly right. And so you just remember there'll be some people for whom you are perfect. So we need to have consistency and a level of frequency too, so that we are there each day, just reminding them of you know, what you're made of. And the way I describe it is that side of things, that content has to beat a singular drum each day. So I'm not off talking about, politics or this, that, or the other. And that might be sounding quite dull or monotonous, but you're reinforcing a point for people. And they know when they come to you, it's for this one thing. And there's a lot of very popular people who produce a lot of content, but we have no idea what they do. And so we need to remember that. You need to stay in lane. And if I can just give one quick tip on this, it's essential to make sure that the content isn't just spouting common sense, obvious stuff. You should be showing that you really get it. So a really, really good tip is tell us what we all think is true, but then add the twist. But here's the bit you weren't thinking, or here's your blind spot, or here's the evolution on this. And every time you're doing that, that audience starts thinking, hey, this person thinks differently. This person's seeing a bit higher. Adding your twist means you're not giving like, hey, you should work hard or be authentic. It's like, sure, I know everyone else is saying that, but there's this thing too. So that's a thing you should be doing each day in the content, and being present with the audience in comments and so on is how I neatly segue to the other side of what you should be doing. So this is, again, for a beginner, but for anyone else as well. The other side is that you must recognize that the game, the magic, and the deals all come from these interactions one-on-one. And I'm talking more about higher ticket selling. So, if you're selling a $5 product, that's slightly different. But if I'm selling, even $100, if I've got no money, I should be engaging with someone one-on-one to start the process going, and recognize that despite the current mainstream narrative of you should be commenting all day long, I'm going, by the way, I'm right in what I'm about to say. What you should be doing is sure commenting, but you really should be focusing more on the DMs, because the DMs are where you take that individual out of the public in the form of that content, and you start helping them, interacting with them, and understanding their world and creating trust. And that's where nurture is formed. And that's where we move through a process whereby they're like, do you know what? Yeah, I'd love a call. Maybe you can help me. And beautiful things happen there. That's how I started. And when my content was getting zero traction 10 years ago on Facebook, I was in the DMs. I always had a target early on, which was 20 new conversations a day. So every single day, starting new conversations. And that's how we can get the cash flow traction. Yeah. But what's crucial is that, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, as we get bigger, we shouldn't get too fancy and think, well, everyone will come to me because my content's popping. Show up, get in the DMs. Maybe you're doing fewer, but they are, targeted. You're spending time showing you care and nurturing them to the sale. If we just rely on content, it is not a good strategy. That's only half or part of the game. We have to get on the pitch and interact with the individuals too.
Which of those two is the most common blind spot for people, would you say, Richard?
100% is the second part, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised even today when I read messages from people saying, do you know what? You've made me think maybe I should get into the DMs a bit. And I'm like, what have you been doing? So you're running a business. And what it is it's because the mainstream narrative for most content creators is post content, focus on engagement and reach and followers, and comment all day long, because then your inbox will blow up. And the thing is, what's happening is these people are looking at their comments and thinking, where are the leads? And they're looking at their inbox and thinking, where are the leads? Meanwhile, the buyers are in the background, like the serious people who are going to spend $8,000 a month with you. Yeah, they're curious. They don't comment. They look at your profile and they're gone. And that was an opportunity for you to nurture something. But we can't always look in the same places for leads. We need to recognize that it's a little more subtle than that. And truthfully, the people who comment the most aren't buyers. They're other content creators trying to get engagement on their posts too. I'm sounding cynical, but I'm just being real with everyone.
Well, especially when you start to build a following and you've got high engagement.
Indeed.
People are going to use that as a way to amplify their own messages.
They do. And many of them are refreshing the profile at like the same time every day, going, where's the post? Where's the post? I want to get in there first with my comment. It's kind of crazy.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a bit about, I'm just going to take you back a step if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So you talked about the post, sharing expertise with a twist.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of that, Richard, where
Yeah, and
it
so
work really well?
let me construct it so everyone gets it. What I call it, the way I describe it is a reframe, basically. So what we want to do, if anyone's listening, needs to say to themselves, what's the commonly held belief or narrative that people have of my industry, of my space?
Yeah.
What's the thing people think is true, but I, as the expert, think, yeah, but actually there's a bit more to it than that. It's not quite as simple as that. You need to then make clear that case. And what you're doing is you're not saying it's wrong, you're saying, yeah, but it's a little more subtle than that. And that's what's crucial, showing you're thinking higher. So you've asked for example. A really good one is there's a terrible saying, although it's popular, a terrible saying, which is build it and they will come. This is not true at all. Build it and they don't necessarily come, because there's much more to it. So I remember I wrote a post along those lines. I was like, it's not build it and they will come, it's build it and then go and get your audience and warm them and nurture them and show them you're legit and be there long term and be trustworthy and transparent. And then they will start to trust you. There's still no coming yet. And it's now you need to warm them to point of sale. And I was making a point of it being a lot more convoluted than that. I think I did another one as well, which was the classic sales line, which is people buy people. And it's like, no, they don't. People buy people that they like. There's a big thing we need to recognize. And I think what's important is what we're doing is saying, we've got to remember that we may know this stuff and our peer group might as well, but the average buyer maybe is a little bit unsure. And we've got to remember, if we're targeting the frustrated, they're frustrated because they have symptoms of a problem, but they probably don't know what the problem is. So when we speak to those symptoms, we're demonstrating awareness of what they're going through. And they're just going to be thinking, do you know what? That's exactly how I didn't realize other people could see it that way. That's exactly what I think too. Maybe this reframe on things is why I'm not doing so well. So to kind of sum it all up, the outcome emotionally of your post, your reframe post, should be that the reader thinks to themselves, no wonder I'm not getting the results, because I've been doing it this way and I've been overlooking this nuance here. That's the crucial bit.
I really like that. It just it goes below the surface, doesn't it? You're taking people below the surface of, I do X, Y, and Z, and actually really starting to talk to people's situations and problems.
Exactly, because we've got to look at how, marketing has really evolved. And at time of recording, what we've got now is quite a raised bar. And what I mean by that is the inexperienced can appear on the surface quite experienced, because if you read a book or watch a video on YouTube, you can rebuild that as a post and make it look like you know what you're talking about. And you might articulate it really well, but unless you've lived it over and over and over, like I've made tens of thousands of calls, or at least interactions probably in my 20 years. And with that in mind, I'm able to say, like, yeah, but there's this thing. And that's what's crucial. And it doesn't matter if you haven't got that amount of experience. It's what you know as an expert is often overlooked. And it's a raised bar, because the average now is probably quite a well represented version of something that people might use in their business. But what's crucial is you're showing essentially what you described there, which is a greater depth for it. Then people are like, this person's different, and show that you're the thinker on it, and that's you then as a thought leader.
And it's it's interesting, because I see a lot of, I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, as I know you are, Richard, and I see a lot of generic posts that could be, I don't know if they are, but they could be AI generated or chat.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I think really, but there's such a good example of that. I don't know what's my camera. Such a good example of this is this kind of post about, for instance, being authentic or trying hard. And, the sentiment is wonderful. But when we read those all day long, if we're going to read yet another one from you, then, the reader ends up thinking or feeling quite hollow. They're like, but I knew that. So that's why we always have to think, before you hit post, say the thing, sure, but what's the twist? What's the thing that we are overlooking? What's the revision or evolution on it? And now we'll be thinking, that's something I didn't know. And half the people will be like, yeah, I knew that anyway. But some people will be thinking, that's the thing I needed. And you only need a few and then you're off. It's so good when you nail those posts.
Yeah, I love that. So think about the twist or the deeper below the surface level of information that people perhaps won't consider.
Exactly. Because the common sense, obvious stuff, everyone knows. And and here's the little thing, which is why people often get poor leads, is if you only do that basic stuff, you're only impressing the entry level who don't know even that. And that's why you often get the poor leads who are like, I'm just starting out. And you're like, where are all the advanced guys who are like a little further along who I want to get selling to? Well, you're too basic. So you need to bring these golden little nuggets in for them to think this person's at a higher level. It's really crucial.
Yeah. And when they're at a higher level, they've got more experience, but they've probably generated, or they've created a better business. So they've got more budget. They're prepared to make that investment.
It really is.
People earlier in the cycle can't do that, can they?
You're so right. And it was something I was taught many years ago, which is the higher you fly, the less resistance there is. And it's people at the top. They're like, brilliant, love that. I need the problem fixed. And, oh yeah, there's the money, no problem at all. And it's interesting that the higher you position yourself, because this always about positioning, higher position yourself, the more money you can ask for. And it's weird how you have to work harder for that first 100K. And then when you're moving up through the levels, it's just like it really does get simpler because you're attracting people further up the spectrum of potential buyers.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And I guess it's just it's getting beyond that early. It's a bit like takeoff, isn't it? They say, is it 80% of the fuel is on takeoff on a rocket?
Indeed, all that. I've had a few flying lessons recently, so I head in all of this stuff. But you're exactly right. The higher up you go, the less problems there are. You can move your mixture down to lean, and it's a lot easier up there.
Yeah. It's getting off the ground, isn't it? For a lot of people, it's about how do I get that initial engagement on LinkedIn? How do I start to build a following, cultivate the right audience? And that post structure is really going to help people.
It does help, but it's not enough. That's the problem. And it's like, what's sad is that you have so much talent writing genuinely really great posts, and then you have popular people posting what they like. And of course, what we do is we think, well, maybe we should post like them. No, they've earned the right to post what they like because they've got there. So your start point has to be 20% the content and 80% in terms of building content is getting the audience. So if you go back almost 6 years now, when I started all this on LinkedIn, I was showing up on other people's posts more, and I was commenting more, and I was really making a point of going and getting my audience. So just because you've got, the way to look at this is most people listening to this who are using content for their business, probably their posts are fine. They could be better, sure, but they're probably all right. It's usually the lack of distribution is down to popularity and the fact that people aren't thinking of you. And so you have to be quite manual to start with to kind of get the flywheel moving.
Okay, so can you talk about that a bit more, Richard?
100%. So
quality posts and then engaging with other people's posts and building a community.
Yeah. So for instance, if I'm posting on day one, whatever I post will get no views unless I go and get people. So for instance, every day I should be connecting with new people. Why would we not do that? Right. So it might be 3 to 5 new people that I'm having a discussion with. Maybe a really good tip is you do keyword search on your topic, filter by events, and find events on your topic and go connect with people going to that event. You go as well, listen to them and meet some people there. You're essentially networking online. But here's the beautiful part. When you do your post, you can then pop in a comment and say, I do this, even now, I still do it. New connections, lovely to meet you. What are your thoughts on this? Tag 3 of them. And because you've just connected them recently, so many of them, Justin, they're like, do you know what? That's a lovely way to welcome me to your network. I've never had that before. It's such a nice thing to bring them in. But can you see I'm manually saying, hey, there's this post here. Another thing is recognizing algorithmically that if you and I have some back and forth, the chances are that your post will then show up in my newsfeed. So it's important to not just connect with people. I want to connect and then have some DM back and forth. I don't need to sell anything. I'm going to rely on my content to do some of the heavy lifting. And this is a very top of funnel moment. It's just this person, I'll ask how they're doing. I saw they're going to this event, or we've got this thing in common. How are you? And they get back. If I'm going back and forth twice on DMs, LinkedIn is going to say, maybe that person should see Richard's content as well. And so now my activity with the individuals each day will help put my content on their radar. So there's a couple of things that I'm doing manually to bring them in, and it really does help a lot. I might also comment on someone else's post, or I might tag that person in a comment, but in a wholesome way on my post, and say something like, Justin, tag Justin, you and I talked about this earlier this week, or your post this morning was just not about this topic. I'm sure the audience would love hearing from you as well. And so I'm being quite manual to bring these people in, because otherwise I'm sitting there hoping something might just magically happen, and it doesn't work like that. But what's crucial is we say to ourselves, let's commit with discipline to, for instance, do this for 60 days, post every day, and do this work. And after a while you can ease up, because they start naturally seeing you, because if your content's good enough, you're saying good stuff, and so they are wanting to write. And when they write a comment, you respond, and you're validating their decision to show up, and it happens again the next day. So it does start compounding. And I must share this. So about 2 months ago, I wanted to prove this point. So what I did was I wrote a post with a deliberately rubbish first line. So the hook was awful. And then the second line, the one that makes people click on see more, that teaser, I wrote something like, and this second line's not much good either. And then the post, I added an image, which was a photo of it was like, I cut the picture so it was just the corner of my chin. That was it. And I got like 500 likes, and I deliberately didn't write any comments or anything like that. And I was like, the point of the post, I explained in the post, the point of it was, you can't do just what the people who've been doing it a long time are doing, because that's not going to work for you. And I'm like, this post will probably do quite well without me touching it, by virtue of the fact that I've invested in it in the past. And I've got a picture of my chin and a terrible hook, and it's still going to do fine. And people were writing in comments like, I can't believe it. And they were like, I wonder how many views this got. And I remember writing like, it's been an hour, it's got like 20,000 views. And it wasn't to show off, it was to prove a point that you have to go build it to begin with. And then after a while you can, that's why people get annoyed, isn't it? Because they're thinking, how has this person posted such amateur trash and got such a good amount of engagement? It's not you, it's just simply what they've put in behind the background.
Wow. So they're really useful insights. In fact, news to me, Richard, today. Okay. So as well as the quality of the post, actually that the new connections, and then the tagging of either new connections or established connections in posts asking for their opinion.
Yeah, and so
that draws them in.
And here's the thing, there's a lot of fear around connecting with peers and let's call them competitors as well. And I think that's a mistake. And there's two reasons why. One, if you were to tag in, let's just say we both do sales, right? And if I was insecure, I'd worry about you stealing my success, but there's plenty to go around, isn't there? So what I can do is I can tag you and say, Justin, I know you're an expert in this area. What are your thoughts? And the fragile ego, if I had one, would be thinking, well, I don't want to do that because he'll steal all of my views and customers. That's not how it works. You're the author of the post. You tend to find that you still stay in the spotlight, but you've just brought this person in, and that's helped boost the post because I've tagged you and you've reciprocated with a comment. I need to check just little fine details that you're awake. Ideally you've got the green dot, so I know you're live. I don't want to post that comment if you're tucked up in bed in your time zone. But the other part, which is wonderful, is that there are no individuals anymore on LinkedIn because everyone's got a network. So should you decide to write a comment, LinkedIn will then send my post to a small minority of your network that you've worked really hard to connect with. And when you do this over and over again, what happens is your network, who love you, might start to be interested in me as well, or at least some are. Equally, it goes both ways. Some of my network will then see you as well and think, this guy's so much more articulate than Richard. I'm switching. He's my guy now. Or they love us both. But what you're doing is making use of network effects. So it algorithmically helps, but we shouldn't worry too much about bringing competitors in, because what we're doing is we're also, for want of a better phrase, suckling somewhat on their networks as well.
And vice versa, right? So it helps them, it helps you. And everybody, you know, all boats rise when the tide rises.
They do.
Right?
Exactly right way to put it.
I love that. Yeah. So there's some really useful practical things that people can do. And then can we go back to the conversation about the direct messages, the DMs,
yes,
Richard?
Absolutely.
So can you talk about how you advise people to get started with that then? Because if somebody's not doing any of that today, and you know, they might have reasonable engagement on posts, and you know, there's some good activity going on, they're perhaps not tagging people in those posts anyway, so that's an opportunity to amplify further. But then, would you mind just kind of breaking it down?
Absolutely.
How's the DM piece work?
The first thing to do is you can write this down. You can do it every day, but you need to think to yourself, what are the buckets where I'm going to find these leads? Let's call them a lead, and that is potentially someone I could speak to. The obvious one is your inbox, but that's the one that you'll probably get the least leads in by volume. Then the next one is comments on your post. Fine. But where else can we look? Where actually tend to be the lurkers, and where are the people who are looking but not necessarily bold enough to write something? It's followers and profile views, but it's also looking at people who've liked or replied to one of your comments elsewhere. So if I write a comment on your post and 4 people like it, the nice thing about LinkedIn, it tells me exactly who they are. I should look, okay, well, I've got 2 people in the wrong region with the wrong job title, but this person here is ideal. Maybe I can connect with them. But the crucial part, and this is, I genuinely think there's this massive Pareto efficiency here of about 80% of my business over the last 6 years, when it's come through from LinkedIn, has been from profile views. Because for me, at least, in business to business, the average high-end corporate buyer of my services, who's going to spend a high 4 or 5 figure per month amount, is not going to be mucking around writing comments on posts nearly as much as exercising a bit of human curiosity, then getting on with their day. And that manifests as looking at a post, going, good point. Who's Richard Moore? Because that's the human behavior. We're all voyeurs. We want to know who they are. Clicks on my link, sees my profile, and is gone. But LinkedIn, of course, logs that. So to this person who's starting out, who might be getting some measure of engagement, the crucial thing is, especially about an hour after your post, hit your profile, click on profile views, and have a look at who's been looking at you in the last hour or so. That spike of interest represents human curiosity, which is massive leverage, and crucially is also your in. Because you now need to send them a message, and here's the meat of the meal is, what do we actually say to them? And if we think about the analogy of going to a wedding, so if you and I sit next to each other at a table at a wedding and we don't know who each other is, we'll get on fine because we've got our thing to talk about. So how do you know the bride or groom? And we'll get on chatting because we've got that thing in common. If I met you in a street, I don't really have anything to say. So I could speak to you, sure, but I don't have any leverage. And the wedding is our commonality, which is our leverage. So we're using the same principle here. The thing they did is our entry point to the conversation. So I'll be really clear and give wording here. I want to go to their profile, check, make some judgments. Okay, they're in a country or region where the currency would convert. So they're probably going to be able to pay. A job title, probably in the right space, industry sector or vertical is aligned with what I might do. And just some basic checks, but don't overthink it because we never fully know. And then I'm going to hit connect. And when it suggests, so don't do this on the app, do it on the website version. When it suggests, do you want to send a note? You hit yes.
Yeah.
And it's really simple, a reasonable thing that you send. We don't want to be over the top. We don't want to write too much. Our objective here is to get them to reply. Sure, connection accepted would be nice, but we want a reply. So like we earn the right to sell. We don't just do it straight off the bat. So the message will need to stand out, and I leverage the thing they did. Hi, Justin. I just want to say thanks so much for checking out my profile today. I really appreciate it. Out of interest, did anything catch your eye? Lots of love, Richard, or whatever. And that's it. So you have 300, I wouldn't be like, 300 characters, which is excellent. It keeps it super concise. Don't send in-mails. We're all conditioned already that an in-mail is a paid email.
Yeah.
That's someone selling me. So we're going
Yeah.
under the radar a bit more. This is a wholesome, reasonable message. I saw you looked at my profile. Thanks. And by the way, did anything catch your eye? And most people will accept that. And some of them will reply. And look how simple it is. And it's what I'm not doing is writing, by the way, a bit about me. I've got this background here. Or you might be interested in my webinar. It never works, ever. If it does, you got lucky. That's like saying, I know how to make money. I just buy a lottery ticket and it worked. That doesn't mean you know how to make money. You won the lottery. So you can't do that selling the first message thing. What will happen, here's the wonderful thing, is it's the same every time. They'll be quite reasonable back. They'll say, thanks, Richard. Yeah, I loved your post earlier today. It was really interesting. So I had to check out the profile. I didn't see anything. There was nothing in particular, but it was just nice to see it. All the best. And that's it. That's probably what you'll get.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is say, like, we want to identify now the thing they mentioned. So you saw my post. Oh, great. Thanks. What was it about the post that you found interesting out of interest? So whatever they did, we isolate the thing, and that's what we ask. And it could be anything. You know, I run a poll, you know, like where people select an answer. What's your problem in sales? This, that, or the other. And they vote for one of them. Same again. Hi, Justin. Thanks. I just want to say thanks so much for voting in my poll today. I really appreciate it. How are you? Oh, I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, it was a good poll. Then my response back would be, it almost writes itself. Well, actually, a lot of people wrote the same answer out of interest. What made you select that one? Whatever they do, we just isolate it. Right. Some won't answer, but many, because you're just being reasonable, will give you some detail. And now's the fun bit, because the ones who elaborate, the ones who are like, oh, well, is this and all this stuff, they open up. They've probably seen your content before and they're looking up to you. And just think about it. Imagine a business owner willing with a stranger to open up and go, I've actually got this problem at the moment. No one shares their problems. They're like, no, I'm fine. I'm all right. If you ask someone in the street, what problems have you got? I'm all right. I haven't got any problems. Everyone's got problems, but they only share them with the people they want to try and help, you know, ask them to help with. So it just works so well, because if they share and open up, this is what I call earned right now to pivot onto a call, you know, and you like, don't stay in the DMs, move to a call where you've got this proper interaction and you can do great things.
So, and that's really, I love that approach, Richard. How, in your experience, how many messages is that then to get to that point? Is it 2 or 3 exchanges?
Yeah, it really is. If you're doing question, answer, what happens is they kind of pop out of that, let's call it a trance, and like, sorry, what's with all the questions now? And it's like, you're being too interrogative. It's far better to do that process. And like, if they then give you some detail, well, you know what, I voted for that in the poll because I actually need a bit more help with this, or I've been thinking about doing this, or I've always struggled with that part of it, or whatever. That's almost the point now where they've shared the struggle. Take it to the call, not because you want to sell them a product outwardly, but because you can do a better job of helping them. So you simply say, you know, well, do you know what? This is what I do really well. I help people with this kind of thing. I'd be quite happy to share a few tips if you'd like. And then, of course, they say yes, because think of the context. They looked at your vote, your content, voted in your poll, answered your question, gave you more detail. Of course, they're playing along. So when you suggest you might be able to help them fix the issue, they tend to be like, yes, please, that'd be brilliant. And the key part I often add after, sorry, I add in that message is, and don't you think it'd be nice to chat properly on a call anyway? And people are always like, yeah, good point, rather than just mucking around in the DMs. And now it's really straightforward. When you get on the call, then help them, like genuinely, like, so here's some things you could do, by the way. So you're showing some expertise. Has that helped? Oh my goodness, it's really brilliant. Thank you so much, Richard. That's helped so much. Well, look, this is what I do. Do you want to explore what it would look like if I helped you, like, properly? Well, what do you mean? And then you just go, you've earned the right to pitch now.
Yeah,
so the funny thing is, people don't want to do this because this sounds like too much work. They just want to send out a message and get the person to say yes back. And they will say to me, till they're blue in the face, but Richard, I do cold calling or cold messages and I still get leads and people saying yes, please. It's like, yeah, but the difference is immense. someone from a cold message who says, go on then, let's get on a call, is very different to someone who I've nurtured going, yes, please, I'd really like to explore that. They might both buy, but the one who started cold tends to play more games. I know, because they've just sold enough. They tend to play games. They need discounts, and they're never fully as hot as they might be. They're much more in the, do you know what, go on then, let's give it a punt category. Whereas the latter that's been warmed, warmer people, they tend to pay full rate because they're happy to. And they're like, I can't wait to start. And, I've had people saying, thank you so much, because they've got to buy it. And one of the most extreme examples of that latter camp is Apple. People will blindly, even when they're broke, completely broke, hand over thousands of quid for the latest iPhone, because they're so sold on that tribe and that whole brand. They just want to be part of it. And if Apple was a nobody, it would not work, but it does, because it's a whole way of life and a culture, and that's why people are so warm to it. So it's worth it, because it's more fulfilling for you too. And you tend to find there's less discounts and less game playing, and actually a higher frequency of sales. It's just the longer route is often the more effective one. You may feel less efficient, and that's true. You're not sending out as many messages, but you are being more effective, and more effective is where the money is.
Yeah, very good. I really like that advice. And where do you stand, Richard, on dare I say it, automation? Do you use any, or is this all manual?
So I don't, and the reason why, well, let's be really clear. So I don't fully, because my back-end offers require sufficient nurture that I need to step in for a lot of it anyway. Automation's not going to be able to do a 10K sale of a course. It's just not going to do it well enough. I'm going to have to step in at some point. I don't have the volume of traffic to be able to do that. And it does work with some people who have an eye-watering amount of traffic, and they can just sell anything because enough people are hitting them. But the thing is, it's turning off so many as well. And I like having the shots at goal, partly because it's sport for me and I enjoy it. But also, I'm a bit unique because, a bit like you, I'm teaching people how to sell properly. So if I'm not a practitioner myself, then I'm going to lose my edge. So I need to be on the pitch anyway. But the thing about automation is there is a place for it. And so if you look at the lower ticket offerings, the $100 workshop, the $1,000 course, the ones I'm not going to get on a call for, but the stuff that's fairly, cheap, there's forms of automation there. So there will be ads, or for instance, I've got a newsletter that's ghostwritten. A guy transcribes my ideas and puts it together, and is automated in the sense that I don't write that, send it out, structure it, do the segmentation, build the landing pages. That's what the team does. So there's a place for it. And I want to be really clear, because for new starters, they need to understand how they evolve in their role with selling. When you've got going after a while, you can put such things in place to, allow you to focus on the bigger ticket sales at the top, lower volume, high ticket products, whereas, and then use automation to sell to the bigger masses. So my $100 workshop, it's like there's sales all the time of it. It's sat on my featured links on my profile, nice and simple for people to go buy that. And I'm not making those calls. But I want to be clear, if I'm starting out and it's day one, I would make those calls. And that's incredibly inefficient, making a phone call for $100. But we can't think to ourselves, well, I don't need to do that. I need to spend time with bigger things. It's day one, you have no customers. Anything that moves that you could sell to, you should probably be trying to do that. So to start with, I was selling 3-figure offers, so in the hundreds myself, to get the ball rolling. Then you get capital, and it's just simple. After a while, you've then earned the right to deploy that into more automation. So yes, it has a place, but I think a lot of people who don't want to, I'm being mean, they don't want to do the work. They hope automation will replace them doing the work. And you tend to find that, yes, automation can help, but probably you should be doing the work first. And then you can only step out of that when the automation can take over for you. And you tend to find you need to still be on the pitch at some point.
Yeah, and I guess there's lots of different automation tools. I suppose there are different parts of the funnel, aren't there?
That's true.
It's more effective at different parts. I'm certainly not, close to the bottom of the funnel where you want those one-to-one sales conversations built to trust. credibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's
A
automation
number
at
of
the
those
top.
early stages. Yeah.
Indeed, there's automation at the top in terms of, you know, scraping profiles and that. But you just got to be careful, because what LinkedIn trades off is subscriptions, sure, but also selling ads. And you can't sell ads if no one's on LinkedIn and the activity is just bots. So what they're doing, they make sure of is, you know, bots that are doing high frequency activity on their website are tend to result in that account getting into trouble. So LinkedIn jail, as it's fondly known, and things like that. So we need to watch it. And if we're doing high ticket, lower volume selling, you tend to not really need the automation at the top of funnel so much. If you want to go and find a bunch of people who potentially could buy your product, like I said earlier, search against keywords, filter by events, and you'll have, like, you know, it could be like sales masterclass, and I can have like tomorrow there's 463 people attending this virtual conference on how to sell online. Attend, connect with a bunch of people who look good. I think that's going to beat most automation, because automation relies on all their data on their profiles that aren't up to date to be right. Whereas I can use my human judgment. And I always say to myself, if you are selling lower volume, higher ticket stuff, and you require thousands and thousands and thousands of leads, something is very broken with your process. You shouldn't need that many. So I'm doing 3-5 conversations a day, you know, in order to get those a sale a day kind of thing. And like that should be sufficient. If I was doing 50, I suck, and it's something wrong with what I'm doing. And it's like, you should focus more on a lower amount of people, but doing, it's the same as always, like quality conversations rather than how many can I get through. Not a lottery ticket strategy, but one where you craft the sale, if that makes sense.
Yeah. High quality, lower volume, because you're confident in the value proposition and
the higher volume, low ticket stuff that you aren't going to get on the phone and sell. Well, you know, drive traffic there in volume from good content. And like, that's what I love about it. So I can have automation in form of the newsletter and ads, but in the main, majority of organic sales, where the first thing I see is a Stripe payment, has come through content, profile, featured link, landing page. That's all it is to it.
Yeah, wow. So even that you've systemized so that it happens almost in the background.
Yeah, always a process. And, you know, I've got some very wonderful people on the team who've built this out and written great landing page copy and so on. But, you know, it's important to harvest at all levels. You know, you may be operating at the bottom level to begin with. After a while, you start evolving up the chain to deal with the higher ticket offers, but there should always be something selling to those lower levels. Some people will only ever spend $100 and can't afford 1,000. So whatever you got, you can give them. But take your time, build a product at a time, do well with one before you release the next one out. But it just makes sense, doesn't it? If you're getting enough traffic on your profile, you should direct it somewhere. Don't presume for a second that they will know what to do next. So you need to signpost their next step.
And make it really easy for them to go through the different stages of consideration and conversion.
I think it will surprise everyone how like explicit you have to be. You know, my feature links are like pre-recorded workshop selling, like explaining this thing. Otherwise people don't get it. And you would presume, if you're compelling enough, that someone will just get in touch. Some do, but there's a bloated majority who don't do that. So in your about section, contact me by email here or DM me on LinkedIn. Like, you've got to be really clear, you know, use the URL that they offer you or the book appointment button they now added and things like that. Otherwise, you can't presume people are going to work it all out, because the average person doesn't navigate LinkedIn very well, you know.
No. So if anybody wants to check this out, they can check your profile out, Richard. They'll see for themselves exactly how you've structured it.
See, I've even put it in order. So you can see this. It's really transparent. The sales ladder itself, the 4 featured links go up in levels. So there's the free, or the only transaction is your email address. That's the newsletter. $100 workshop. It's going to be $150 soon. $1,000 course. And then there's the accelerator, which is one of the back-end products. And I don't actually mention like the bespoke stuff. The reason why is it's not the flagship higher volume thing. So why am I going to confuse the audience too much? That's out of the back end of conversations where it's the very low volume. I might get a one-on-one corporate training contract, and that's, you know, 5 or 6 figures, and like you're not going to advertise that on your about section. You know, that's just happening in the background.
Yeah, and they will contact you directly, won't they? And
they do.
They might even be some of those direct messages that you're sending that trigger those opportunities.
And that I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you. That's what has always kept my interest in selling over the years, is the next conversation you have may be your biggest client, and you never know what they're going to buy. And it's so exciting knowing that they're going to be a new connection, and they might connect you with someone else. And if we all think, if anyone's done many sales before, you look back at your best ever deal, there was a time just before that when you hadn't got that. And you know, you didn't know. And so it's so exciting knowing that the next piece of connection might be something huge that changes your direction altogether.
Yeah, there is something about sales, isn't there? That the kind of thrill of the chase, but then also the excitement of you know, the acceptance of a deal, or the new client coming on board. It's just there's nothing else.
I don't think you're human if you don't get that back of the net feeling whenever you. I mean, I still love. You can probably feel from my energy, even $100 sale, I still love it. It's just the feeling of, we did it, we got it, and they're happy, and I know I can deliver, and it's just a wonderful thing to keep score with money as well.
Yes, brilliant. I love it. I love it. Thanks, Richard. Richard, we are, believe it or not, we're kind of 45 minutes in, nearly 50 minutes in, actually. I'm not going to kind of go on the scripted questions. What else is important for you to kind of get across today for people listening, where you think there's just, you know, there's a deeper conversation or a twist to something they don't know?
So I think one thing I bang on about, it's becoming a crusade really, is what people are choosing to put their time into. And it stems from sales management. You know, part of my role was to identify what people are doing right and help them do more of it, and also look at where the dead wood is, not necessarily the people, but like tasks, what things are wasting time. And what's fascinating, having grown up with social media, so I'm in my 40s now, technically mid 40s now, and what's interesting, I've seen so much of it. And if you look at, just take LinkedIn as a microcosm here, look at LinkedIn, say over the 6 years or so almost that I've been doing this. I was saying to someone recently that there are very few, like you can count on 2 hands, people who were around 6 years ago that are around today. The average big content creator that everyone loves and knows and is a household name is gone in 2 years. And it's interesting that, you know, there's this focus so much on popularity. And for many, and I know because they WhatsApp me and ask for help, for many, they're just broke. And the economy, or rather the currency they're trying to trade off, is popularity. I get the leverage that being abundant and, you know, in impressions and so on gets you. And people may say, oh, it's easy for you to say, Richard, you got 70,000 followers. This was always the case. 70,000 is not much over 6 years of doing this. Some people have done that in 1 year. The crucial thing to convey is, if you're at, say, 2,000 followers and you're getting a trickle of engagement, and you're falling for the narrative that when you get to 50 or 100,000 followers, or when you get a bunch more engagement, you'll be a millionaire or you'll make lots of money. Yes, of course, by sheer volume, you'll get the odd person dropping in your lap, but that's not a business strategy. You couldn't take your business to investors and they say, how do you generate revenue? You say, I just do this, and every so often I sporadically manage to get a sale. What we need to understand is that you have to show up in the sales side of thing as well. And content is part of the game. It is not the whole game. So I know I'm getting like pushy on this point, but it's becoming a norm. It is really becoming a norm to think that content is the whole thing, because, and this is the psychology, because it's easy relatively to comment all day and write really nice posts and have lovely chats with people and feel good about yourself. But the problem is, it's a slow poison, because at the back of your mind, you know you're not making much money. And of course, I'm biased because I come from a sales background, but any business leader who's doing half decent will tell you that the sales is the oxygen for the company.
Yeah.
So unless you're having the question, where's my next sale coming from, feature each day, then what you're doing is you're being distracted by essentially the dopamine hits and the pursuit of being popular as compensation for not getting sales.
Wow.
So I'm always concerned when I'm seeing like 4, 5, 6 hours a day being spent writing comments. Of course, you're getting a volume of people looking at you, but why such volume to then make 1,000, 2,000 quid a year, a month even? It's just appallingly, like, you could go stack shelves and make more money. So all I'm saying is be measured here. Yes, content, yes, community, yes, engagement. And community is king here. It really is important. Positioning and all that, it helps you rise up and have more attraction, kind of clout, if people think of you well. But you have got to get on the pitch. You need to be in the trenches every day and willing to engage with the individual. And as I've described a bit earlier with that process in the DMs, just take them through that process. And life's a lot better when you're making lots of money from sales, and you can live with a lot less engagement. And I'm telling people, as someone who's done it, tens of thousands of followers do not make everything all right. Loads and loads of engagement does not make everything all right. I've done the viral posts, I've done all that kind of thing. It doesn't make the difference. It's the things you do with the individuals that makes the difference if you want to get high ticket selling. So I could talk all night about that, but I think the gist.
That's so, yeah, you're so right. And it's a bit of a wake-up call for people who perhaps have fallen into that trap of I'm posting, I'm commenting, I'm liking, but I'm not getting the kind of consideration conversion.
Yeah. And I've had people crying, and it's the frustration, and they're like, I can't. I remember people saying, like, I can't do another course on how to write better hooks and get better storytelling and do better posts and get more reach and engagement and learn the algorithm. And I'm not devaluing or diminishing those things, but more of that isn't going to help. It's like if I keep buying a more and more expensive bike, it doesn't make me better as a cyclist. I have to actually build my leg muscles at some point and do some. I actually have to pedal. You know what I mean? So it's just so.
You look good though.
Oh, I look amazing. But you know, I'm using that analogy because, like, I have an okay bike. It's certainly not a very expensive one, but I put in the miles. And so I remember doing a sportive, like a race around Suffolk a few months ago, and you've got these 10,000 quid bikes, and you're sailing past them because it's like, well, all the money's on the bike and you're not putting any time in on the hard days, you know. But I was being a bit extreme about it. But that's the point there. It's, you know, you need to, and I've seen it all before. It's the same. It's never, this stuff never changes. Even when it's cold calling, you know, you can look busy and you can show up early to work and you can wear the fancy suits. But unless you're doing the right calls with the right people, you'll never make any money. And I really like the fact that there's no hiding. You know, if you're not doing it right, you're not going to make any money. If you can't make money, you end up retreating and going getting a job somewhere. And I just think this is fixable, because a huge majority of the people I help have a tiny following, like maybe 1,000 followers, and they get a trickle of engagement. And like some of them are making $500,000 a year because they're just focused on the right stuff rather than mucking around trying to be popular. And if it's happening, tell yourself, I'm falling for this. And I just think it should be a red flag if someone's pushing reach and engagement, but not conversion. Again, I'm biased, but still, I'm right.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
I am right.
I've had experience of the same, Richard, so I know you're right as well. Richard, thank you so much for sharing so openly today. Brilliant content. Anybody who's listened to this, go back and listen again. I'm going to listen to this conversation again.
Thank you.
There are some really, really useful insights from today. Richard, so people can find you on LinkedIn, Richard James Moore.
That's correct, yes.
Is that the best place for people to
get? It really is. Yeah, you can message me, and as a thank you, if anyone like needs more clarity or wants to ask any questions, I'm absolutely happy to answer them. This is my Netflix. I quite enjoy answering questions about this kind of thing, so quite happy to help. There's therichardmoore.com as well if they want to learn more. But really, the LinkedIn profile should be doing its job.
Super. I'll put both of those in the show notes for this episode as well. Richard, thanks so much for your generosity. I know you and I could talk about this for hours.
I know. I feel that.
we literally are scratching the surface, but what you've shared today is going to be immensely valuable for our listeners. So thanks so much, and hopefully we'll have you on a future episode as well. So
wonderful.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Richard. Take care, and see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Genuine thanks for listening to the Inspire Sales Podcast. We hope you enjoy learning some of the most cutting-edge sales techniques and getting close to some of the greatest sales leaders in the world now and in the future. If you'd like to explore further, please feel free to visit our website, focusforgrowth.co.uk. And if you'd like to take our Sales Acceleration Scorecard and discover your sales and influencing score, then check out the show notes for the link in the bio. If you have enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button. If you know people in your sales and leadership network that you think would like to listen to, then please share this episode with them. I'd be very grateful. If you'd like to get in touch with me, please feel free to do so. If you have suggestions for further guests, or if you'd like to appear yourself, please contact me or my team. You can connect with me. I'd love to hear from you. My social profiles are in the show notes, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode. Thanks again for listening. See you soon.